Rain drummed on the stadium roof the night I learned my teammate's closet had room for two. Not just the narrow equipment room that stole us from the storm, but that quiet place inside a man where he stores his bravest and most breakable truths. I was the new pitcher. He was the steady right fielder. Between leather gloves and chalky rosin, we found a dry corner, a soft light, and a love that asked us both to step through. If this story moves you, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us make more caring, heartfelt journeys together. I arrived in Henderson in late spring with a duffel bag, a frayed glove, and a second chance. The Barons played out by the river, where dragonflies hovered over the reeds and evenings smelled like popcorn and cut grass. Minor league stadiums have a way of making you feel both invisible and indispensable. People cheer loud enough to rattle your bones, but your name is still written in dry erase ink. I liked that. I was 28, old enough to know that hope is patient, young enough to still believe it. The clubhouse breathed like a living thing, all cedar oil and detergent, laughter bouncing off gray lockers. The first time I saw Miles, he was sitting at his cubby, tying his cleats with the slow care of someone who knows what lasts. He glanced up. One steady look, a small nod. I felt the day settle. He stood when I walked in, as if manners mattered in a world that often forgot them. Evan, right? His voice carried a low warmth, like a bass note under a song. He was 32, maybe, with a sun-browned face and eyes that took in more than they let on. He offered his hand. Palm warm, grip solid, not a contest, not a test. "Miles," he said. "Right field. I've got an extra locker shelf if you need some space." That was the first of his small graces, those little offers that never felt like charity, just like the right shape of kindness. He slid over, cleared a stack of batting gloves I would later learn belonged to half the outfield, and made room without a fuss. I told him I appreciated it. I meant more than he knew. The Barons were a quilt of men sewn from different corners of the country. August, our catcher, wore his beard like a shield and told stories in a voice that could read bedtime tales or break up bar fights. Colton, a first baseman out of Oklahoma, never stopped humming. Coach Diaz, lean and watchful, had the patience of a farmer and the steel of an old bridge. He called us by our last names except when he didn't. Those were the moments to remember. He had a picture of his daughter taped to his clipboard and a sign above his office door. Do the little things right. The clubhouse stereo fought between classic rock and newer pop. Somebody always burned toast. Someone else always fixed it. Baseball is a small town that travels, and I learned the new streets one inning at a time. On the field, the world quieted into lanes I understood. The first bullpen session, my arm loosened with the rhythm I'd missed through a winter of doubt. Miles tracked fly balls with a clean economy of motion. If you watched long enough, you forgot the effort behind it. He never chased a ball the wrong way first. His first words to me on the grass were simple. "Breathe." Then, "Again." He pointed to the rosin bag and then to me. "Grip how you grip when you're at peace." He wasn't a coach. He wasn't telling me how to pitch. He was reminding me what calm felt like a hand on your back steadying you in a room that spins. We stayed late after that first practice, picking up stray baseballs that had rolled into the warning track gravel. He told me he grew up 3 towns over, said his dad taught him to field grounders with the back of a spoon in the kitchen since they couldn't break any more lamps. I told him about my sister Nora and the way she insisted on standing in the backyard to catch my early curveballs with a tennis racket because my throws had a mind of their own. He laughed in that quiet way of his, more breath than sound, and it felt like being let in on something secret that wasn't a secret at all. When the sun leaned toward the river and shadows went long, he asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes before my brain caught up to my mouth. We walked down to a brick shop on the corner where the owner knew everyone's name and spelled mine wrong on purpose. The bell over the door had a little rust around its edges, but it sang kindly. Miles ordered black coffee and a cookie he swore he would only eat half of. He ate the whole thing and pushed the last bite toward me like it was his plan all along. He told me about the community center where he read with kids twice a week. "I've got the Thursday crowd," he said. "A bunch of 5th graders who will keep me honest." I told him I liked the way words can make a room bigger. He nodded like he knew exactly what I meant and looked out the window at the river slipping past. There are moments that make a line down your life, before and after. I didn't know that was one yet, but I felt the chalk at my feet. The afternoon the storm rolled in, nobody expected it. The forecast had promised clear skies, and then a bank of gray shouldered the sun from the field. The wind smelled like tin and rain. Coach Diaz sent us out to throw a few quick innings of practice before the weather turned mean. I took the mound under a sky that had gone from hopeful to old in a handful of minutes. We felt the temperature drop as if someone had opened a door to a colder room. When thunder shook the grandstand and the first big drop slapped the infield, we sprinted for cover. Diaz pointed at Miles and me. "Tarp straps!" he shouted. "Equipment room!" We ducked into the narrow cinder-block hallway under the stands and swung open the equipment room door. The air inside hung heavy with leather and pine tar, the intimate smells of a game unsettled. Racks of bats leaned like soldiers at ease. Plastic bins of rosin and medical tape lined up like little promises. We shoved in against the crowding of everything a team thinks it might need. I reached for the straps. The door, weighted and stubborn, swung inward and bumped my heel harder than I expected. "Careful," Miles said, hand at my back without thinking about it. The light flickered when lightning cracked somewhere close. He looked up, then back at me. The door drifted almost shut, and then kissed its frame with an unhelpful thud. The handle stuck. He tried it. I tried it. The storm did not care. We weren't trapped, not really. The door was old and moody. It had a habit of sticking when the air got thick. But there's a difference between stuck and closed and the way it felt to stand in that narrow place with him while the rain pounded the roof like a million small conversations. "They'll come in a minute," Miles said, not worried. He settled against a stack of ball buckets and tipped a bat out of the way with the toe of his cleat so I could sit. We watched the sliver of light at the door's edge blink with every lightning memory the sky tried to share. He rolled a baseball between his palms like a worry stone. "Storms," he said, and smiled without showing teeth. "They make you tell the truth about what's sturdy. We made ordinary talk first." He asked about my apartment, if I had enough towels, if the water heater was honest. I asked him about his truck and the way its radio favored old stations. We joked about the way August pretended to hate the team dog, a beagle mix named Sid who had learned to sit in the on-deck circle during batting practice. In the way of people who are listening for something else, we kept our words light as the room breathed around us. Then the conversation found a seam and slipped inside. "When I was 9, he said, looking at that baseball in his hands, "my mom would sit me near the window when it stormed and tell me 2 things. Count the beats to see how close the lightning is, and breathe so your heart does not confuse thunder for fear." He looked up at me. It's good advice for a lot of things. I liked the way he used words like they knew how to behave. The storm softened its fist, rain losing some of its scold for patter. I told him I was good at holding my breath. It came out like a joke. It wasn't. He tilted his head. The look he gave me was a kindness and an invitation to continue. I said, choosing care. "I moved here for the chance to pitch more and think less. New town, new habits. Maybe it'll let me be loud in my quiet places." The room made that easy. No one else. The smell of the game, the sense of being tucked away and seen at the same time. His shoulder brushed mine when he shifted, and it felt like the most natural math. 2 men, 1 small room, a gentle contact that promised nothing and everything. Somebody banged on the door with a fist and yelled, "You good?" August, of course, with a touch of melancholy drama in his tone. "We're stuck," Miles called back. "Try the trick." The trick was just pulling in and up at the same time, and when August did it, the door popped open as if it had never planned to misbehave. He peered in, rain running off the bill of his hat. "You 2 planning to live here now?" he asked. I caught the eye roll he hid behind his grin. "If so, I'll need a list for housewarming gifts." We laughed, stepped back into the hallway, and the world was loud again. But the room had made a promise to us while we were in it. It had held something we didn't yet have language for. After that, our days took on a careful rhythm that felt both new and already known. We shared small rituals like old friends, tap the dugout roof before first pitch, half an orange in the 4th inning, a look across the field before every batter. It is an uncommon thing to meet a person whose quiet matches your own. I wore my silence like armor. He wore his like a well-loved jacket. We didn't talk about the moment in the equipment room, but it hovered like the scent of rain days after a storm. He texted me a song one night, some old track that let the guitar be tender. I texted back a poem my sister had underlined in a library book and then returned, something about doors and the kinds of knocks that change you. On Thursdays, I followed him to the community center. The building used to be a post office, all brick and long windows, and the auditorium smelled like old paper and fresh hope. He read out loud to 15 kids who loved the parts where he changed voices. He knew their names and their snack preferences, who liked grape juice, who needed a second chance with long words. He asked me to do the voices of the smaller dragons in a story about a timid giant. He clapped when I did it badly. When one little boy with a cowlick that defied gravity fell asleep on Miles's shoulder during the last chapter, I had to pace myself to stay steady. The world around us was gentle. It is hard to be scared when kindness is happening right in front of you like facts. We lingered in the parking lot under a sky that was practicing being summer. He leaned against his truck, one hand in his pocket like he was holding his own heart steady. "Sometimes," he said, "I keep parts of myself tucked on high shelves, safe, out of sight." He looked patient, as if he wasn't asking me to match him, just offering a piece of himself. "I know those shelves," I said. The truth came in like a tide, slow, then sure. "Mine are labeled with rules I never agreed to." He nodded, not with surprise, but with recognition. And then he did a kindly thing I didn't know I needed. He changed the subject, made a joke about the beagle stealing his sock, told me I threw a mean change-up in warm-ups and would I like to aim it at someone's head for him if they kept changing the clubhouse playlist to polka. He let me retreat without losing ground. That kind of grace is steady work. I took the mound 2 nights later with a knot between my shoulder blades and a heart that couldn't decide if it was a bird or a brick. My arm felt good, the baseball familiar and alive in my hand. The first pitch cut the plate like I meant it to. Miles clapped his glove against his thigh in right field, the sound a reliable punctuation mark. I breathed. Then I forgot how to. The second batter fouled off 4 of my best pitches and then reached on a soft grounder our shortstop couldn't pull from the dirt. I tightened. The stadium got too bright. When that happens, the game starts to feel like it is happening to you instead of through you. 5 pitches later, I let a curveball hang and watched it soar toward the river. Miles jogged in when the inning ended, put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed once. "Hey," he said, low so no one else would hear. "The next pitch hasn't happened yet." It was the kind of truth that breathes on your behalf until your ribs remember how. Then my arm betrayed me, a pinch that slid into a dull ache like weather in winter. I tried to pitch through it because pride and worry are an unfortunate pair that love each other too well. Coach Diaz saw it anyway, as he always did. He walked out, took the ball, said my last name gently as if it were a friend in need of water. The trainer met me in the dugout with an ice pack and a face that promised I wasn't alone. The clubhouse after a bad inning can sound like a church at night, everything there but hushed and hollow. I sat with my shoulder wrapped and my thoughts too loud. Miles came in after the win with grass on his pants and dirt on his knee from a sliding catch that saved the game for all of us. He took in the scene with one long look. "Soup?" he asked. It was the kind of offer that fixes more than one kind of ache. He came by my apartment with a grocery bag and an air of knowing where things belong without needing instructions. He asked where I kept my pots. I pointed. He nodded like he'd already guessed. He chopped celery while telling me the story of the time August tried to adopt a turtle and then learned that turtles live longer than the average career. He made chicken and rice and sprinkled fresh parsley like my grandmother used to, and I remembered that the world is full of echoes if you listen for them. We ate with the baseball game on mute and jazz playing low. He washed dishes by hand, even though I have a dishwasher that works fine. "Dishwashers are great," he said, smiling, "but when someone is hurting, the sink is more honest. The couch in my place is too small for a man his size." But we made it work by sitting on the floor with our backs against it like teenagers after prom. My shoulder stopped complaining, soothed by ice and care. We talked about families as the night softened. His dad taught high school civics and retired just last year. His mom ran a Sunday morning pancake ministry from their front porch for everyone who needed breakfast and a hug. They split when he was young but liked each other better after that. Like they had been meant to be cousins instead of spouses. He didn't volunteer and I didn't pry about those shelves of his. When he took his time to say goodnight, I felt the kind of pull that asks you to be braver than your habits. We left a space equal to a breath and a promise between us. He squeezed my good shoulder briefly at the door and said, "Text if you need help opening anything tomorrow with that arm." The hallway swallowed him quiet, and I stood there watching the carpet be plain. When my phone chimed, it was him sending a picture of the soup in a plastic container with a caption, "For lunch tomorrow." I slept and dreamed of the river lit by stadium lights, the way water knows how to keep going without pretending not to be moved. Road trips are a different country inside the season. The bus hums either of movie nights or the soft noise of 20 men learning not to kick each other in their sleep. The team put me next to Miles on the first long ride, not out of plan but logic. We measured space with the easy grace of people who don't need much explanation. He leaned his seat back by degrees to match mine. We traded headphones for an hour and made faces at each other when the songs didn't quite land. At midnight, the bus got quiet in that way that lets you hear your own breathing. A curve on the highway jostled us and his shoulder found mine. He stilled as if to ask a question with his bones. I answered by not moving. It wasn't a secret. It was a kindness. We arrived at a hotel off the highway where the carpets always look clean and the hallways always smell like lemon something or other. A booking glitch put us in less rooms than intended. August, blessed, sacrificed immediately. "I'll bunk with Colton," he said, not knowing Colton snores like he is trying to scare off bears. The front desk handed us 2 keys and apologized as if apologies could change the number of beds in a room. 2 queens, crisp sheets, a window that faced the parking lot where a semi idled all night like a dragon with a tired cough. We brushed our teeth at opposite sinks like a very patient split screen in a movie. We lay there in the dark with the same cartoon on the ceiling that all hotels come with. Tomorrow. We talked until words turned into breaths, and breath turned into the kind of quiet that is 2 people listening for the same sound. At some point I said, soft enough that if he wanted to, he could pretend not to hear, "I like you." It was not a revelation, but a rightness. He rolled onto his side, a careful shift of weight, and let time do the heavy lifting for a minute. "I like you too," he said, the words like a hand taking off its glove. We did a brave and simple thing next. We kissed. Not a conquest, not a proof, not anything to do with victory. It was the kind of kiss that says, "I see you. I am here. I will be gentle in the ways that matter." If a first kiss is a door, this one was a well-oiled hinge. He exhaled against my cheek, and it sent a warm line down to my chest, like a prayer answered with presence. We stopped when we knew stopping was the kindest thing to do. He grinned in the dark, more felt than seen. "We can be careful," he said, "and still be real." And we were. We kept our soft things soft. We slept. I woke with sunshine on my face, and his heartbeat somewhere near me, whether or not his body was. We played that day like the field had been tilted our way. My fastball lived in the part of the strike zone where bats grow quiet. He ran down a ball in the gap and made it look like geometry. In the dugout, August waggled his eyebrows for no reason other than being a person who loves to make people feel seen in ways that don't get them in trouble. After the game, we ate hotel eggs that tasted like compliance and shared a banana from the breakfast bar, because those are the rules. You split what you have when a day asks you to. It was easy to think the world would let us hold the quiet like that forever. Then the world remembered itself, as it does. Someone caught a picture on their phone through the bus window of him sleeping with his head slumped toward my shoulder. It made its way to someone else, and then to a small corner of the internet where people like to guess the shape of things that don't belong to them. The comments came in like static, some tender and some ugly, but all too loud. The next day I found I was suddenly aware of my hands. Where were they? What were they doing? Were they telling the truth or lying just by existing? People's jokes found me like rubber bands. One of the new infielders made a crack that landed too close to the bone. August told him to take a lap and remember his humanity. Team dynamics shifted in subtle ways the way a boat leans into a new wind. It wasn't a storm, not yet. It was a weather change that made everything taste different. I retreated without moving, which is a particular skill of mine and one I don't recommend. I took my coffee to the other side of the room. I stopped sending songs. When he asked if I wanted to grab dinner, I said I had laundry to do, which was true, but not the truth he meant. He didn't chase me. He left a note in my locker on a half-wrinkled index card. Here if you need me. It was in his neat printing, the kind that looks like the person who taught him to write did so with patience and a ruler. Coach Diaz, a man who could smell worry from 2 fields away, pulled me aside on the 3rd day of my quiet. "You good, son?" he asked, the last word an offering and not a claim. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said. "But if you're carrying it alone because you think that's noble, that's not what we teach here." I nodded because that is what you do when you are telling a man you trust that you do not know how to tell the whole of yourself. He patted my shoulder in that understated way of his and told me to throw only 15 in the bullpen and then sit with ice because he was not going to watch me try to pitch pain into obedience. The team lost that night, not because of anything particular, just because baseball is rude sometimes. In the aftermath, the clubhouse emptied like a tide going out. I found my way back to the equipment room because it felt like a place that revealed itself kindly. I opened the door and found him already there, sitting cross-legged on the cement, back against the wall, the little fluorescent light humming above his head like a stubborn bee. He didn't look surprised to see me. He moved his knee half an inch so I would have room. It was enough. We sat there for a while, the way people do when they are letting their insides catch up to their outsides. "I was outed once," he said without a preface. He twirled a piece of medical tape around his finger and then unwound it like a ribbon. "A long time ago in college. The guy I dated thought I was hiding him because I was ashamed. The truth was, I was trying to protect him from a family that hadn't learned how to love me yet, and a team that thought difference was something that belonged to the other dugout. He told a few friends after we broke up and the story got its own legs. My dad didn't call for a week. When he finally did, he asked me if I was okay and then asked me not to tell anyone else until he could wrap his head around it. I mistook that for a life sentence. He looked at me then, not for drama, but for connection. I learned how to live in a closet that wasn't even mine. It was his. It was theirs. But it had room for me too, and after a while it had room for 2. I knew he was giving me something fragile. I held it with 2 hands. "I'm sorry," I said, for the pain inside the story and the patience that had not been owed. He shrugged a very small shrug that meant it both mattered, and he had forgiven parts of it already. "I like you," he said again, repeating it as if to put it into the room where it would be safe. "I like you, and I like our team, and I like this game, and I don't want to lose any of those things. I've made peace with a closet that kept me safe, but I don't want to lock it from the inside anymore." He reached toward me but left an inch he let me close. I closed it. "I've lived in that high shelf way," I said, staring at the bins labeled with things like laces and wraps, as if the world could be organized into boxes that tidy. It made me feel clever to be careful. It kept me safe, but it made good things smaller. There is a kind of bravery that is a big speech with trumpets, and there is the other kind, which is 2 people admitting hard truth softly in a room that smells like leather and chalk. We decided nothing except to be kind and steady and honest. It was more than a decision. It was a way to live. We told August 1st because sometimes you choose the person who has already chosen you without asking you to be anything but yourself. We sat with him in the dugout before a game while the grounds crew chalked lines straight enough to walk your heart along. "We're seeing each other," I told him, the words landing like coins in a jar. He blinked once in a way that said the world had become both more obvious and more beautiful. "Okay," he said. He nodded, beard hiding a smile big enough to make a better day. "I love you both. If anyone forgets their manners, I will reintroduce them to the concept." He told us about his brother, who had come out at 20, and the way their father had sat on the porch for 3 hours and then come back inside with tears in his eyes and a plate full of fried chicken as if nourishment could be an apology. "It gets better," he said, "and it gets weird, and then it gets normal, which is the best part." Word traveled the way word does in small towns and larger. A few teammates came by our lockers with handshakes that held onto the pause a beat longer, a short language of yes and good and I see you. One young pitcher asked if he could ask questions and then asked none, just told us he was proud of the way we lived our values because that's what his grandmother would have called it. A couple of the guys made jokes they thought were gentle and learned, in the next breath, how to stop when August's eyebrows performed a practical sermon. Coach Diaz said there were no policies about who you loved other than love being the point. And if we needed him to turn into a wall, he would. Mostly, we played ball and ate sunflower seeds and argued about whether or not a hot dog counts as a sandwich. Life did what it does best when given the chance. It went on. And then came a night that felt like a page you would want to underline if life let you keep a book of itself. The stands filled. The lights hummed. The river beyond center field caught fire in the sunset way that makes even the worst seats feel like the best ones in town. I worked a clean first inning and then a second, easing my way through their lineup with the trust that comes when a hand you love holds your heart steady from afar. In the bottom of the eighth, with a one-run lead, I watched their best hitter send a fastball of mine belting toward the right field wall. Time can slow in moments like that. It can tie its shoes and check the oven and still show up in time. Miles ran, glove open like a prayer, and climbed the wall with a grace that didn't look like a leap so much as a decision. He came down with the ball in a fist, and the whole stadium forgot itself long enough to become a single sound. We won. Not because of one play, though plays like that change weather systems, but because of the thousand small decisions that make a team. Fireworks don't happen every night at our level, but that night, the town brought out their leftover 4th of July stash and let them bloom above us in chrysanthemum bursts of gold and white. In the soft aftermath, the field smelling sweet and burned at the same time, we found our way back to the equipment room with the unremarkable surety of routine. The door stuck and then opened. He leaned against the wall where he had sat the first time, and I stepped in to stand where I had stood. We looked at each other in that gentle way that people do when they understand that within a small space, the world can grow very large. We kissed, grateful and sturdy, and when we pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "We should tell Diaz," he said, "and then PR, so when the world wants to make it something else, we have already named it what it is." I nodded. We should. We did. PR, as it turns out, is made of people. They said it was our story to tell. They suggested a simple path, a picture of us walking into the community center with a caption that said more about the kids than about us, because frankly, that's how we wanted it anyway. We posted it. Our hands not clasped, not hidden, simply there. The distance between them, the sort of breath that speaks its own language. The responses arrived like a mixed choir. Some sang harmony. Some sang off-key. The ones that mattered were the ones that said their nephew watched baseball again because he felt seen, or their grandmother smiled and said she was glad Love had good teammates now. A few people had to leave the room because the room of our lives no longer matched the shape of the one they preferred. That was okay. We had decided not to lock the door from the inside anymore. Thanksgiving came. The community center needed volunteers for the big meal, the one where nobody needed to take attendance because everyone ate. We wore aprons and name tags that were not strictly necessary because people pointed and said our names anyway, but it felt right to meet them all again, properly. I poured gravy with the concentration of a surgeon. He carved turkey, each slice like a small gift. An older man with a veteran's cap and a cane tapped the table and said he'd seen a lot in his 80 years, and he wanted us to know love was the thing he recognized easiest. After the last plate, we carried trays to the kitchen and washed dishes until our hands pruned. He pressed his shoulder to mine in the hallway where nobody else could see and sighed. Not because he was tired, though he was, but because there is a kind of satisfaction that lives behind the sternum when you have fed people who needed it and you did it together. My mother called on a Tuesday evening when the world felt ordinary. She listened to me say the good parts and the frustrating parts and then laughed at a story about the beagle stealing a cleat. She asked the question without asking the question. "Your voice is softer these days," she said. "Are you happy?" It was an invitation. So I walked into the cleaner light of the living room and told her. I told her about Miles, about the way he makes soup when arms hurt, and how he reads to kids who challenge him to be sillier than he expects of himself. I told her about the equipment room and the storm, about shelves and doors and the way a person can learn new ways to breathe. She made a sound that mothers make when their sons let them into their actual lives. "I love you," she said, the kind that takes the varnish off any fake fear. "I want to meet him." She brought out my father in her next breath. He said hello like a man who had already decided what mattered, that I was safe, that I was loved, that I was not alone. His dad called him the day after we posted the picture, the line crackly like a vinyl record in a good way. They spoke for a long time, not about politics or decisions, but about a porch he was fixing and a bird that kept trying to make a nest in the mailbox. Then his dad, a man who taught kids for 3 decades how to be citizens worth the effort, said, "I am proud of you." There was a pause where I imagined him balancing a lot of old instincts and letting most of them fall away. "Bring him by," he said, "if he likes pancakes." I smiled from the kitchen where I pretended not to hear something holy happen in a living room. Winter leaned in. We built a small tree in my apartment that looked intentionally sparse in a way that made me laugh. He looped lights with more patience than I thought necessary and then rearranged them because he found a better path. We wrapped a present for August with far too much tape and then gave up and put it in a gift bag like people with sense. The dog stole a bow and wore it around the clubhouse until someone rescued the tape from his ears. We spent a New Year's Eve on the couch, 2 mugs of hot chocolate and a quiet countdown where we kissed at midnight in the simple way that says the year will have our names on it because we are writing it down. Spring training returned like a song you've had stuck in your head all winter in the good way. The new rookie looked at us with the careful curiosity of people raised on a different kind of permission. He asked if he could ask, and then asked for proof that love does not make you worse at your job. We let our play answer. He grinned and said, "Got it," and then asked about how to fix the way his toe dragged on the mound. We took him to the equipment room and found a different pair of laces. There are places that will always be monuments, no matter how small. That room was one for us. We didn't linger in it to hide. We stepped into it sometimes to remember. We came back out with what we needed and then went on. Home games felt different and not different at all. The same kids asked for autographs. The same old couple brought homemade cookies they swore were not bribes. The hot dog vendor learned to make a veggie version for August's new health kick and then ate them all himself. We changed in the same lockers, tossed the same jokes into the same air, counted the same beats between lightning and sound when summer storms rolled through and made us pause a game we wanted to finish. "Breathe," he would say sometimes, half a joke, half a blessing. I would. And then I would again. We made plans like people who have learned not to make too many. A weekend in the mountains where the air comes from a different place and you can feel it. A trip to meet his dad which ended with too many pancakes and a new family tradition I can't eat my way out of. A promise to show up at the community center for the end-of-year pageant where the smallest dragon stole the entire show. We didn't tie everything to a schedule. We put some ideas on the counter and left them there until they either sprouted or they didn't. Love, it turns out, is less a checklist than a garden. Sometimes late, I would ask the question in the soft way, "Do you ever wish it were easier?" He would hold the thought like an egg. "Sometimes," he'd say. "Then I think about the things that are easy. Lying is easy. Leaving is easy. Naming the thing you are and building a life around it, that's the good kind of work. I like work that counts. We learned how to say, 'I'm sorry' without addenda. We learned when to tease and when to let the tenderness sit where it landed. We learned the team's small dramas and helped steer them toward laughter. We learned we could be ourselves in rooms that used to require shrinking. And we learned that the rooms didn't mind. On an evening that smelled like honeysuckle and infield clay, we walked the warning track after everyone else had gone. Stadiums empty, feel like chapels. The seats lean in. The field breathes. We paused by the equipment room because it had a way of becoming our landmark even when we didn't intend to make pilgrimages. He touched the doorframe with his fingertips, the way people touch stone that means something. "It kept us dry," he said with a grin. "It kept us honest," I said. He nodded like a man who knows both things were true at once. "It had room for 2, he added, voice warm, eyes steady. "But we outgrew it." We stood there until the lights clicked off in sections, the world easing back into night. Then we walked home, step for step, the kind of silence that is companionship and not absence. When new storms came, we did not seek closets out of fear. We counted beats, measured distance from the last lightning to the next thunder, breathed. Sometimes, yes, we ducked into the equipment room for tape or rosin or a moment to tie our shoes where the floor is level and the noise is less. And sometimes our hands found each other there because that is what they know to do when surrounded by the things that built our life. We kept the door open behind us. We let the room be a room and not a rule. I think about that first storm often. The way the door stuck and then let go. The way the light flickered and then steadied. The way the place we hid became the place we told the truth to ourselves in whispered words first and louder later. The world is not made of gentle moments, not only. People will say and do things that make you clutch your heart and check to see that it is still there. But then you find your team or your person or your quiet room that becomes a wide field. And then you walk out together. Whatever weather the day brings, good hats on, mitts ready. A grin you can't help but share because you have named what is yours and taken care to hold it well. If you had told me that spring, when I carried a small duffel across a parking lot that had not yet learned my footsteps, that I would find love behind a door that sticks in humid air, I would have smiled and thanked you for your optimism. But that is the way with good stories. They hide in ordinary rooms and wait for you to come in out of the rain. They smell like leather and chalk. They have shelves, sure, but they also have space. They have places to sit, a bat to hold if your hands need something to do, a ball to roll between your palms when the truth is coming and you need to greet it kindly. My teammate's closet had room for two, and in time it had a door we could prop open with a spare block of pine, the kind batters use to dry their hands. We learned to step through. We learned to come back only when we needed tape. We learned to keep walking. And when the crowd roars and the river blushes and the lights come up like a promise, we stand side by side in right field and on the mound and everywhere else that counts. Breathing, steady, ready, home.